Here's a quick little question you could answer in the comments. What was the first video game you've ever played? When I was a little kid, probably around 6 or 7, I was at my grandparents' house for a family reunion, maybe Thanksgiving? I don't remember. And one of my awesome uncles came up to me and wanted to show me something in his room. So, okay, I go to his room and I see this blocky purple dragon on a TV screen just standing there with his back turned. And my uncle hands me this weird button-covered contraption that felt good to wrap your hands around. Now, I'm not entirely sure how fast I adapted to it, but I remember it being strangely intuitive, and me catching on surprisingly quickly. I remember jumping and running around, spraying fire on the green guys, flying through the sky for a bit, trying to jump over these guys' canes. But most of all, before having to get off, I remember, after making a tough glide, running around in a green hilly field, just free as free could be, and seeing more rolling hills in the distance that sadly I couldn't go to, but still gave me this awestruck, adventurous feeling. I may just be over-romanticizing this, but it felt like I found access to, no, entered a new world, one with endless possibilities and adventure, and, quite possibly, if you were to ask my dad, ruined my life. Aw, yeah, boy! I'm finally getting to do this after years of on and off planning. Taking a look at one of my most favorite video game series of all time, Spyro the Dragon, the best platforming mascot. How can I back up this claim? Easy. Exhibit A. He's a dragon. He can set an inferno to your crops, your livelihood, and your life if your village doesn't at least offer up one full-grown steer every other day. Who wouldn't want to play as one of these monstrous things? Burninating the countryside, burninating the peasants. 3 factors led then fairly new studio Insomniac Games to the creation of Spyro. 1. A demand for more family-friendly games on the PlayStation to more directly compete with Nintendo and to counterbalance the influx of M-rated hits on the system. 2. Somebody on the team making a new 3D game engine perfect for open-world exploration. And 3. One of the game designers / artists just saying, bruh, a dragon would make such a great playable character, like you could fly, breathe fire, smash stuff, like, well, they're my favorite animal. I mean, I know they ain't real, but they're still my favorite animal.
They are just the greatest creature. I mean, it's the combination of a Tyrannosaurus Rex with wings and breathes fire. I mean, you've got the best of everything in a dragon.
This is new territory for a relatively new team just getting off a completely different kind of game that only had moderate success. But with smart planning and ingenious design decisions, they're able to pull off one of the most notable platforming experiences of that generation, having the Purple Lizard being considered the PlayStation's unofficial mascot. Well, second to Crash, but I'll get into the relationship between the teams behind Crash and Spyro on another date. Just know, these games are great and hold a special place in many people's hearts, mine included. FYI, I'm going to focus on the original PlayStation version of these games, not the recent remake. If you want my opinions on that, check out this cruddy video. At least after watching this one, as I mainly mull over the differences between this and that. With those things out of the way, it's time to address a burning question you may be asking. What are these games even about? Well, they'll have you playing as Spyro, a young dragon who's capable of flaming, charging, jumping, and gliding. In the following games, he will get new moves like hovering, climbing, head bashing, spitting stuff, swimming underwater, and no longer having access to this mostly useless, very situational role. I'll tell you what, Spyro feels wonderful to control. Jumping and making long glides feel inherently satisfying, and using the charge as a dash makes movement feel fast, fluid, and, if you're going through a bunch of enemies and chests, unstoppable. Despite this and playing these games so many times, I had some difficulty with my latest playthrough. I don't know, this game just feels more jank than I remember. Like, I don't remember Spyro having this much air drift, and I distinctly remember the charge being able to clear more height. Well, it does in the sequels, so there's that. So if the gameplay I'm showing here kinda sucks at some points, I would like to apologize in advance for offending your sensibilities, cause it's definitely offending mine. Maybe my muscle memory is thinking of when I played the Reignited trilogy, especially since I'm using a PS4 controller this time around. In my opinion, Reignited had the best and most refined gameplay, way better than the originals. Heck, I think I remember saying in that video that it probably ruined my ability to play the classic ones because, well, that's probably what's happening. I feel like the best control-related thing with Reignited was the camera control. This game was being released around the same time that DualShock 1 was being introduced with its ingenious and ergonomic twin analog sticks. Obviously, the left one's good for movement, but people still haven't figured out that the right one would have been great for camera work. Yeah, you use the back shoulder buttons to move the camera, and they are slow. So here's a hint. Although it's not that good, triangle is for looking around, and the Spyro's head is kind of in the way, and he doesn't want to look beyond a 180 cone, and so it's annoying to use. But hey, it can be used as a de facto centering camera button if you hold it for 3/4 of a second. Kind of delayed, but it's practical and, well, better than nothing. They do add dedicated center camera controls in the later games, but I'll talk about major control changes between the games when I get to them. Back to the other end of a controller, if you've only purchased the black bar original release of the game and not the green bar greatest hits version, then there's no analog support at all. So you would have to settle for the 8-directional D-pad to explore these fully 3D environments. It's not bad. I mean, the game was mostly designed with this in mind, but I'd rather be waterboarded by the CIA than try to 100% any 3D Spyro game through D-pad only. So yeah, the controls got better over time, but the gameplay here is still fundamentally solid. Even if you have difficulty performing basic movement and functions because you're new to games or develop spontaneous butterfingers like me, it still feels intuitive and fun to control.
And I remember Brian Hastings in particular, he's now our Chief Creative Officer, focusing on the camera and controls for Spyro, and his goal was to make it as fun to just run Spyro around in circles as it was to play Mario 64. And I remember looking at Mario 64 with Brian, and he pointed out that, hey, just running around in a circle with Mario is fun. Just climbing up those first few trees and doing flips off the tree is awesome. That is fun factor.
The creators took a step out of Nintendo's playbook and made sure Spyro was fun and satisfying to control and built every level perfectly in tune with his abilities. So what do you do with his abilities? These games have a pretty standard collectathon format. You got hub worlds that have multiple levels that you can get to by going through these portals, and dang, the 2 skyboxes is a nice effect. Oh, and the seamless transition for when you enter the levels, seeing this, oh yeah, and then just you diving straight into things, awesome. Man, I wish they kept that seamless transition in every game, but oh well. Each level has a set amount of gems to collect, with each gem color representing a different value. There may also be other things like keys for chests, challenges, side collectibles, level-specific collectibles for their challenges, and, of course, the quintessential main collectible, which switches from game to game. Throughout all of this, there's an interesting dichotomy going on in the gameplay that's a constant in these games. Your main offensive options are either to flame or to charge, so things will require you to do either or. For example, wooden containers can be flamed or charged, but metal ones can't be flamed, only charged. Big enemies can't be charged, only flamed, but small enemies can be flamed or charged. Unless they have armor, then only charged. What if an enemy is both big and armored? Well then, you're royally screwed. Nah, there's always a way to take them out. Always a way. Question: why are we playing as this puny little puff-to-magic dragon-looking Wyrm instead of an awesome, formidable, large-bodied incarnation of destruction? Well, one, this design and direction was fitting for a mascot platformer, which were at peak hot at the time. And two, it's what saved his scales. So in the first game, the story about these medieval creatures in their medieval heavy settings starts with a TV interview with the Dragon Elders talking about the Dragon Realms, its economical standing, and also this one guy we exiled to an offshore landfill, that orc gnome hybrid, him. Nasty Nork, I'm making a call out post on my twitter.com. Yo mama so ugly, they pity post her on once reputable magazine covers for easy justice points. Nasty Nork, yo face so deformed, I bet multi-billion-dollar corporations try to mine it for uranium. You're so dumb, your skull is so thick, it has its own gravitational well. You're lucky I have to keep it PG for public broadcast, so I can't exactly tell you where you can put that great mace of yours. Nasty, laid back in his pro gaming chair, oppressed by society, was not amused.
That does it!
Oh my god.
He decides to unleash his apocalyptic level spell that I assume he's been working on, and then just pull out of nowhere because that would make the magic in this world OP. He turns all the dragons into crystal statues, but thanks to his small stature, it missed our title character. Aren't there other adolescent dragons? Was he an early lay before the next wave of dragon eggs? Where are all the female dragons in all this? I don't know, maybe the other kid dragons went into hiding. I don't blame them, since Nasty transformed all the treasure into more of his militant kind. But when others would see danger, Spyro saw opportunity for glory and adventure.
Looks like I've got some things to do.
So yeah, free all the dragons, defeat all the Norks, get all the shiny things, and stuff. Accomplishing this, you venture through 6 fantastical worlds of the Dragon Realm. Artisans, peacekeepers, magic crafters, beast makers, dreamweavers, and Nork Nexus. Each one's practically is and are filled with unique and well-designed levels that are all very adventurous and memorable due to their distinctiveness and or particular gameplay flow and situations. Sometimes you're traversing a big, peaceful open field, and sometimes you're traversing in the dark, wondering how to get past the big metal belly guys in tight hallways. Sometimes the terrain is being manipulated by druids, or even the sizes of the enemies by fools. Sometimes you're traversing inside caves filled with unkillable giant spiders, so you just end up going around the long way through squabbling magic users until you come back later to murder them all with power-ups. Sometimes you're dodging cannon fire and then using their weapons against them. Or maybe you're fighting enormous beasts that still go down in one hit, even though these annoying dogs from an earlier level took 2. I would have made it where these guys took 3 hits and you could probably kind of stun lock them into each hit, which would preserve the fun. But to keep the challenge, I'd probably introduce the threat of being blindsided by quick flanking and or ranged enemies. Yeah, that's one cool thing about this game that sets it apart from the rest. The enemies. So many games in the platforming genre at the time usually just had enemies that would just follow a strict path that's in your way, or maybe would beeline straight to you or shoot some projectile if you got close enough. Spyro focused on enemies that would react to his presence. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a handful of games that are already doing stuff like this, like in Mario 64, but Spyro took it like 50 steps further, like allowing some enemies to have like unique scripting, interact with the environment, work together, or even infight. That's always humorous to watch.
The primary focus of the game would be interaction with the enemies. To the best of my knowledge, that had never been done before.
No. I'm not hyping them up to like if they had like crazy advanced AI that'll deploy complex squad tactics on you, but I'm saying that they feel like real entities acknowledging you as a threat to their well-being, instead of just feeling like a stale obstacle that just wanted you dead. Adds a lot of character and charm to this game, something that the series has in droves. Also, with extremely rare exceptions, every level has different and unique enemies specific to it, all with different behaviors and maybe even some unique killing conditions. At first, the levels feel nice and relaxed, but don't worry, they'll start racking up in difficulty before you know it. Magic crafters, heck, halfway through Peacekeepers is when things really start to heat up. Misty Bog, one of my favorite levels, is a hard one. The wildlife is more dangerous than the orcs themselves. Let's see if you can clear the infamous frog room without getting hit. You're not. Treetops. That one bullcrap jump you are definitely not going to find out how to clear within a timely manner on a blind playthrough unless you run this red thief's butt down the moment you see him. It's fate on sight, bruh. Load it. Seriously, look at this. How is anybody supposed to figure this out? Especially since you gotta go up a path backwards at one point.
Today's cool tip is on Spyro. It's on the treetops level, where we'll be showing you how to get to that last platform that's so tough to get to.
That was quite a ride, Spyro. You've learned a lot since you were a young glider.
Yeah, well, you could have found an easier spot to get stuck.
There's a quicker way if you try to make a tight 270-degree right turn on the first ramp, but whatever, it's still bullcrap. Almost as bullcrap as the supercharged jump in Haunted Towers, where you think you gotta go up here, but no, it's over here, and there's no gems on that pad to even hint you to go there. There are only like a couple of clues signifying that the secret even exists. No wonder they considered it harder than the Treetops one.
You've become a master of the supercharge. Great work.
In every single instance where you can super dash, there is a secret place you can get to.
I almost forgot to mention, supercharge. Arrows on the ground, supercharge. What supercharge? You charge super fast and you can break through anything. Hard to control, but awesome. There's also a super flame that breaks everything for a short while that you get for Frenchic fairies. Where was I? Oh yeah, hard levels. Toasty, the first boss stage. I already mentioned the annoying hounds that take 2 hits, which makes you very easy to get countered. Infinitely more challenging than the boss itself. It says a sheep on stilts, I love that. Yeah, the bosses in this game are kind of lame. They feel more like big normal enemies and that you just need to hit like 2 or 3 times while avoiding very easily avoidable attacks. My favorite levels include Stone Hill, Clifftown, Dry Canyon, not so much a fan of that last one anymore, but I'm liking Wizard's Peak the more I play that. Dark Passage, North Cove, with its ships and headbutting explosive barrels back at the enemy. Twilight Harbor and its Dorito guns. Yeah, the final level of this game, the Norks have had enough and are busting out the big guns. Or just guns, period. Woodline FNFALs, I believe. NATO's answer to the AK-47 during the Cold War. Though not that prevalent since it didn't see much action. Yeah, I'm a bit of a gun nut. No, I ain't that happy or really surprised when they replaced them with Splatoon gear and Reignited. Okay, I need to stop or else I'm going to end up talking about every single level in this game, which would make for a good video on its own, but come on. I love them all, and I appreciate that they really paid close attention to the aesthetics of each stage, even considering color theory and what moods the color palettes would elicit. The visuals are nice, and the music wraps it all together.
I'm getting the crap kicked out of me here.
Yes, one of the best things about this game is its soundtrack. It's unique, discernible, consistent, atmospheric, kinda catchy, and, as music, just overall good quality. I can't even begin to tell you how many late night college essays this OST got me to power through. The music got good bass, nice melodies, and heck, even the instrumental samples used, from the bells and chimes to, especially that electric guitar riff, feel iconic to this game. I love to find more music that sounds like it. I mean, I swear I've listened to some that sound similar, but I don't have any names, so please comment if you know any. Also, if anybody can point me where I could find these original samples, like the guitar riff and whatnot, like, not ripped or recorded from the game, but like, actually the original samples, that would be extremely baller. I know the music was composed on a Kurzweil K2500X keyboard, and I know about the atmospheric sample packs like Distorted Reality 1 and 2, but I want to have those iconic sounds. I would also like to know the legality of using them for music if I ever make a game on my own. Maybe as a little callback to this, inspiration, or whatever. Now that I think about it, did Copeland make some of these samples himself?
The most fun part of the process is being able to be in there like this and I get a phone call and I can shout at my staff, "Don't interrupt me when I'm working."
Oh yeah, the music was composed by Stuart Copeland, best known for being the drummer of the Police. I didn't know the Force even had such a position.
Step one is to beat the level. Now for a 10-year-old kid, this is no problem. But for me, so then once I'm on the level and I've got a general attitude for the game, I have to, within the atmosphere of that level, have a lot of different changes happen, but stay kind of in the atmosphere. Then I go back and I look for how to make those inner complexities more complex and to have deeper sub-layers and things that don't really hit you the first time, but hit you the 16th time so that it can survive repeated listenings.
And he did a great job too. Just take a listen to this bop. What the heck was that? Well, yeah, here's a funny fact. One of the tracks used in this game was repurposed by Copeland from a 1999 live-action Nick show, The Amanda Show, which I knew it! When I was really young, I think I caught an episode of it at a friend's house or something. I don't remember, but I recognize that its theme was not only from Spyro, but from Wizard's Peak specifically. I wasn't 100% sure, and I couldn't confirm back then, but I knew it. I knew executive producer Dan Schneider. Where was I? Oh yeah, the world of the game. Yeah, remember from the beginning of this video when I mentioned this brand new 3D engine good for exploration? Yeah, believe it or not, Spyro was technologically innovative. But in order to explain how, I'll have to attempt to explain how graphics work. Now forgive me and insult, correct me in the comments if I am off, but basically, from my limited understanding of the subject, graphics, specifically 3D polygonal graphics, work by mapping out geometric shapes using mathematical equations, utilizing that depth-granting z-axis, and slapping a texture on them. I'm sure there's more at play here than what I'm talking about, but each of these equations needs its own little processor, and graphics cards are chock full of them. The more graphic processors a system has, the more polygons and other effects can appear on screen. When the amount of polygons begin to exceed the amount of processors, you'll start to run into performance issues, like how the frame rate drops because the processors are pulling double duty. The problem with large 3D environments, especially during this early 3D period, was that they needed a lot of polygons, and therefore, it was easy for too many polygons to appear on screen. To avoid this, some games use the fog mask so they can render what's only near to you without it looking glaring. Other games just had a relatively low amount of polygons throughout the whole level. For example, in Mario 64, the levels typically had less polygons than Mario's own model. And other games just used a lot of tunnels and segments to load in other areas and or to keep your view obstructed. The engine in Spyro was like, hey, what if we have the objects and environments that are close to the player be rendered with more polygons and detailed textures, while objects and environments that are far away in the distance subtly swap out to models that only use a few polygons with flat colors and or gradient textures. Maybe even have multiple layers to make the differences less jarring.
Not only did you have these big, long views where anything in the universe could be seen from afar, but also he created an engine where you could have detail on the objects that were close.
Engine to draw the environments has broken down into 7 different little renderers that work on different levels of detail of the environment to try to keep this, the fact that you're seeing tens of thousands of polygons into something more manageable. The real trick is that in every transition we try to do a fade or morph transition, something where you're not going to see it.
Now the world feels really open without the visuals or the frame rate suffering, and really expands the scope of the gameplay.
Hey, what's on the other side of that river?
Why don't you glide there and find out?
It felt like you could just go anywhere, especially if you were at a high vantage point. This technique is known as level of detail, and is still used in many games to this day. Ooh, look, you can see the sparkle of uncollected gems in the distance. That's a very helpful visual flair. I forgot to mention, but having you collect every single one of a game's most common collectible is an odd choice. I mean, it's fun to smash things and round them all up, but it's easy to miss a few and have no idea where to even begin to look for them, especially if they're intentionally hidden. I remember spending anywhere from 30 minutes to a whole hour on some levels trying to get them all. Like, look at this, I didn't know I can just glide behind here.
Our next tip for you is in the Peacekeeper's World, Clifftown. If you jump off, glide around to your right, you can glide behind the building you first started in and collect the gems there.
Now, you can try to use an online guide, but do you know how hard it is to find the specific gems you're missing? Not an easy experience. I'm looking at you, Mario Odyssey, with your purple coins that thankfully come in spurts. Another thing you got on your agenda in this game is reclaiming the stolen dragon eggs from these opportunistic blue dudes. I know they are just plainly called thieves or even egg thieves, but my sister called them blue dudes one time when I was young and impressionable, so that's just what I headcanoned them as, even though there are some that are different colors. As implied, the quintessential collectathon main collectible of this game are the crystallized dragons. If you can even call them a collectible, I mean, you don't really collect them as you. All you gotta do is walk up on their little pedestal, which causes them to break free of their petrification, and they'll give you some advice, or exposition, or something.
Then find the balloonist. He'll transport you to the next world.
What about Nasty Nork? I'm going after him.
Find dragons first. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, that's right. They're all voice acted, which is really cool. But since there are like 80 of them, some are more talkative than others.
Thank you for releasing me.
Thank you for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me.
Thank you for releasing me.
Oh, thank you for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me.
Oh my gosh, are y'all serious? They're not replaying the same voice clip. They're using different voice actors and told them to say the exact same thing. Couldn't they add some variations on that phrase, like, thank you for saving me, thank you for freeing me, thank you for getting me out of there, thank you for the revive, my dude, can you get me some Kentucky Fried Chicken on the way home? Their little pedestal then becomes a checkpoint in which you can interact with to save the game, or rewatch their talking for some reason.
I never thought I'd be rescued, especially by such a little dragon. What I mean is, I always believed in you, Spyro.
You gotta believe.
Alright! Another thing I like is the voice acting. It's actually really good and not that stilted. Well, for the most part. And of course, we have a main star of the show, the true voice of Spyro.
Where's Nasty Nork? I'll torture him.
Tom Kenny.
Where's Nasty Nork? I'll torture him.
Okay, the first guy was Carlos Alazraqui, most known for the voice of a Taco Bell dog and Rocco from that old Nicktoon, Rocco's Modern Life. But he was only in the first game. Turns out, people didn't really like Spyro's character in the first game, sounding all nasally and having that forced 90s attitude, even though they tried to avoid that exact result.
I think we went through about maybe 5 or 6 versions, you know, where
he was like really young and had Lionel up in the nose, and then he was like really cooler and older, and they actually recorded something like that.
but then they found out he was too mean.
So then we just kind of did a mixture in between the two, where it's kind of like he's really kind of a go-getter kind of guy and kind of tough, but really kind of nice.
But since people still didn't like it, they went with Tom Kenny in the sequels, and with the voice and personality change, they made him more humble and soft-spoken, but still retaining a fiery side. And because of this, it felt like his character matured in between games.
Is this rain ever gonna stop? I've forgotten what the sun looks like.
Or at least that's a way you can interpret it, as to not be weirded out by the changes. Anyways, if you've been around a voice acting block, you may know Tom Kenny from such roles as the other guy from Rocco's Modern Life, miscellaneous characters in some movies, and, eventually he would end up giving a rather minor role voicing, what was it? Yes, it's all connected. All these coincidental links made me realize how close we were to potentially getting a Spyro cartoon on Nickelodeon during the turn of the millennium. It was just one elevator pitch away from happening, but y'all just couldn't do it, could ya? Dan Schneider! Dan Schneider! You may have noticed the yellow glowing bug following Spyro around picking up the gems. Well, that's Sparks the Dragonfly, Spyro's best friend who's been around with him since forever.
And I never switched up. Never forget that.
He's not just there for the sake of it, because I mean having a dragonfly as a best friend is kind of sad, but he's an in-universe way of you having item magnetism, I think that's the term, and is also your health indicator based on his color. Gold and glowing means full health and no worries. Blue means you took an ouchie. Green means you need to find some health. And if he has disappeared, the next hit's gonna kill you. Also, he won't be there to pick up gems for you, meaning that you'll have to do it yourself, which is surprisingly difficult and unsatisfying. Getting them just feels empty without his zinging snag.
Nice.
I think it's implied that he uses some innate dragonfly magic or some crap to shield you from fatal blows, all ranging from headbutts to gunshots. In order to get more health, you gotta feed Sparks butterflies, which spawn whenever you kill fodder, which are the prevalent little harmless creatures you find all over the place that are all different depending on the level. Why do butterflies appear whenever you kill an innocent animal? You know, I had no idea for the longest time. I just accepted it because it was a good gameplay loop and the fodder made the world feel more alive, but as it turns out, it's surprisingly based on an ancient Norse myth, which was likely inspired by the scientific fact that butterflies that's that. Good. Hey, watch these mad skills.
Boom, bam, bada bop, boom, pow.
Yeah, I almost forgot to mention the flying levels, or I guess more commonly known as the speedways. In these stages, you're able to fly around instead of just gliding. Inverted flying controls! Inverted flying controls! I can't change them! Mayday! Mayday! The objective is to clear 4 sets of obstacles before the time runs out, maybe even going for the best time you can muster. They're usually laid out to be done in a particular order, but you can try to break the order in order to find the fastest optimal route. Since the order you're supposed to go in kind of loops in and around itself, breaking it and still keeping an optimal time is not out of the question, and feels often encouraged. I used to not really like these, but after a while, something just clicked, and I actively attempt to get the fastest times I can on them. My best times for these, I believe, are on the Reignited trilogy. If I recall correctly, I think an actual flight engineer or someone from NASA helped with the flying controls. So yes, overall, you smash, flame, and explore around 28 levels through 6 different worlds until you reach Nasty Nork himself. Spoiler alert, I guess, for an M-game that's not really worth getting a spoiler alert to, but look, I know the bosses up to this point mostly sucked. The best one probably being Metalhead, and though I personally like Dr. Shemp more, but bruh, this final boss battle is a letdown even in comparison to those. Imagine being the final boss, but it's mostly chasing and you running away like a wuss because you have less health than any other boss. And if you got all the collectibles up to this point, you can explore the final bonus level, Nasty's Loot, which almost was called Nasty's Booty. Oh yeah. Which has this unique mechanic of you being able to fly from the highest most point of your last highest jump. Which, by the way, you can probably make so many levels designed around that concept. Overall, this game has fun gameplay, amazingly whimsical magical worlds to explore, expertly crafted levels, phenomenal music, and just being a good time from start to finish that still holds up really well to this very day. If you ever feel like playing it, I highly recommend that you do. It is my favorite video game, period. And even without that nostalgic bias, it's still undoubtedly great and paved the way for many games to come. Although I have unbridled praise for this game, I will acknowledge that there are some valid criticisms that can be levied against it. One is that it's not that long, though I kind of disagree that that's a problem. It'll take you around 4 to 8 hours, mostly 6 if you're going for a casual playthrough, or if you're like me, going for that 100% and knowing what you're doing. Probably more so 8 hours if you don't know what you're doing. That's average for most single player games of this nature, plus it's fun to replay from a fresh file, even though it offers no incentives or bonuses for doing so, meaning that there's no inherent replay value. I think it's as long as it needs to be. Any more and it'll probably feel like it's dragging, which some people say it already does. That's the main gripe I see people have of this game. Despite many levels trying to add new twists and ideas, some may say that the levels can get repetitive and boring, which, yeah, this game does need some breaks that aren't just me getting up and getting back to it later. I guess the flight stages are the closest thing to this, but they're band-aids to a broken bone. It's like you're constantly playing, which, while fun, can get tiring. Like, you're not even safe in the home worlds, except, ironically, the one set in enemy territory. Personally, I like to focus on pure core gameplay here, although I can agree on it getting exhausting after a while, especially if you're trying to get most of it done in a single sitting like I was for this review. Still, it's a great experience for anyone just wanting to have some adventurous fun. It can also act as a great introductory game for people wanting to get into gaming, especially kids, offering them a sense of wonder and adventure, all the while offering challenge to those who want it, or a casual fun time for those just wanting to cruise through it. This game was an excellent start to a series, and it had plenty of room and potential to grow on. More things could have been added to this concept, and that's what the sequels attempted to focus on. In 1999 came Spyro II, Ripto's Rage, or Gateway to Glimmer, if you don't know what a freedom tastes like. Some people may argue which subtitle is better, but I could literally care less, as I find them both equally adequate and intriguing. But I slightly like the Ripto's Rage more, as it's the original name and is a pure alliteration, uninterrupted by a lowercase having function word. My English minor now shining through. Anyways, I've been mostly looking at stuff from a perspective of the first game and the series overall, but I really need to talk about how the series evolved. The biggest change from Spyro 1 to Spyro 2 is that it feels less like you're venturing into new territories and more so getting intimately involved in them and their unique conflicts. We got prominent characters, frequent cutscenes, NPCs, and a brand new villain, Ripto, an entitled, tyrannical little piece of work with anger management issues mixed with short man syndrome.
I hate dragons! Gah!
Warning, he can get a little feisty.
No! You despicable little creature! I'll kill you!
Whoa, little red dude. You can't just go around dropping the K word like that. You're gonna get us piss yellow circled of death. Not in my E-rated game. Man, the 90s was wildin'. You see, nowadays, you gotta say that you're gonna game end him.
I'll game end him myself.
Jokes aside, I love Ripto, he's freaking hilarious. Definitely the best Spyro villain, although I think the upcoming Sorceress is a close second because just of how brutal she is. Fun fact, Ripto's name comes from how the kanji or katakana or characters of the Japanese version of Spyro's title looks like it spells out Ripto. Ugh, the Japanese version of Spyro. I would like to take a moment to talk about what just might be one of the worst localization jobs of any game ever. For some asinine crown-eating reason, the Japanese localizers of the first Spyro game decided that the country of Formula 1 racing and Sonic the Hedgehog would not be able to handle the somewhat fast-paced nature of this game, claiming that it made them motion sick. So, because these Sony suits were not able to hold their lunch while looking at a couple of moving polygons, they decided the best course of action would be to completely butcher this game for their market. They ordered it to have a stretched out overhead camera and for the charging to be only as fast as a normal trot and also not being able to freaking jump out of a charge. Yeah, that one caught me off guard the most. Now, there are a bunch of other minor tweaks and additions that I wouldn't mind, like Spyro making vocal noises every once in a while and there being a bunch of tutorial signs. Besides the literally unplayable perspective and tarnished game flow, the strangest thing in this localization is, well, sparks only being green. This is because you're supposed to go out and find dragonfly eggs, so that you can then hatch and raise a superior dragonfly using this Dreamcast ripoff looking accessory, which I don't think ever caught on and stayed Japanese only. Neat ideas, but why would I want to do that? Because, well, look at this gameplay. It's unplayable. If I was a dev, I would have been like Rebel Dev. I would have added a secret option saying game style with two choices, that of being bad and good. Yeah, Spyro never took off in the East, though not for lack of trying. I mean, look at all this anime crap. Speaking of butchered things that I hate, excuse me for the sudden microphone downgrade in 3, 2, 1. I hate how they redesigned Ripto and Reignited. He looks like a gremlin instead of some overly smugged, pissed off looking pipsqueak lava dino. Like, this design just looks like he just wants to gnaw on my bones, while this one actually looks like an egomaniac, which is exactly what Ripto is. Anyways, back to Spyro 2. It's raining and Spyro wants another vacay, so he rushes towards the Dragon Shores portal, but gets intercepted by these freedom fighters in the land of Avalar, looking to get a dragon to fight off the dragon-hating Ripto, who they accidentally teleported here, and now he wants to take over because he can, and he's a meanie. He doesn't like call in a personal army to invade or anything. He was cut off from his homeworld in the nick of time, so he only has his 2 giant goons, Crush and Gold. So instead, he just goes around causing conflict, faction uprisings, rebellions, and civil war in order to destabilize the region for greater control, which is scarily accurate to how modern wars played out. Anyways, you team up with the Professor, a smart mole guy experimenting with portal technology, Alora, a cute goat girl.
I'm a fawn, you dork.
Oh, sorry.
Who's mainly the level head of the group. And finally, the guy you're going to have the most run-ins with for the rest of the franchise, Hunter, the thick-headed sports junkie cheetah.
You're a dragon?
You got a problem with that, pussycat?
I think they were just going to give him some kind of surfer dude bro personality, but I have no idea what they landed on.
Hey, Spyro, check out this cool cave I found. Let's play a little game.
I really hate to say this, but I can't tell if he's slow in the head or condescendingly acting like I am.
The monkeys have escaped from the Avalar Zoo, and I've been sent here to catch them. But they keep throwing coconuts at me, and it hurts.
Trey, what's wrong with your text boxes? Shut up, I'll acknowledge it in a minute. Oh, and I almost forgot. Zoe. She's a fairy who acts as your checkpoints and talks nothing but tutorial stuff you probably already figured out on your own. Well, you get tasked with going to all the worlds of Avalar and collecting each of their talismans, which essentially means get to the end of a level. Don't worry, the levels aren't really linear. There is still other stuff to do, and of course a web of gems to collect. Gameplay-wise, this game is a sharp step up. Spyro feels as good as control as ever, with some additions I very much welcome. Now you're able to do this hover at the end of your glide, which feels like a godsend. So many jumps in Spyro 1, I was like, man, I wish I could grab ledge. Guess it sucks a lot of attention out of the platforming, but I don't think it'll carry you, because now some glides are more insane. Yeah, don't get too cocky with your gliding, you'll still need skill. Jumping out of charging no longer has a height penalty, so that's awesome and great for the flow. Here's a habit you should develop. To get the maximum distance off of a single jump while standing still, press charge and then press and hold jump a split second after. Now, there is an exploit known as the double jump, which you can get by jumping and then I think pressing jump again while also holding charge. I don't know. I never pulled it off. And honestly, you don't really need it, except for maybe speedruns and other exploits. One thing they did mess up is the fact that you can no longer rely on this short headbutt motion you can get by quickly tapping charge. Yeah, it seems like a minor complaint, but let me tell you, it was great for smashing metal stuff near ledges and small platforms without putting yourself at risk. I guess you can just head bash now, but you don't get that till way later in the game. Oh yeah, that's another new thing in this game. Learnable moves. In every hub world, you can learn a new move that will allow you more access to the levels. These being in reverse order, head bashing, climbing, and swimming underwater. Yeah, Spyro can swim now, so water is no longer a hazard. Yeah, let me tell you about swimming. In most 3D platformers, heck, video games in general, being underwater, more often than not, sucks, as you get slowed down and the controls get really cumbersome, especially as you try to navigate a completely 3D space, up and down included. Well, not with Spyro. Holding charge underwater turns you into a little torpedo, smashing everything in sight and shooting out into the air like if you were a dolphin.
I really like how Spyro can swim now. The way that he dives down, it's very natural, and I love it that there is no breathing gauge or anything like that, so just keep down there and enjoy the ambiance, and I love it how he can just shoot out of the water.
It feels really good, and while I don't think it's perfect, it is definitely one of the best underwater controls in all of gaming, in my opinion. Also, there's no breath meter or countdown, possibly because sea dragons, I guess. So you can stay underwater for as long as you want. I think the main purpose of you having to unlock these moves is to make you revisit levels in order to get to that one part you couldn't before, which, meh, I'm not a fan of it. Oh, come back to the first level after I learned how to climb just to do this single 15-second challenge? No thanks. How about I skillfully cheese it instead? They made this export more harder in the Reignited, but it's still possible. Well, if they haven't patched it by now. Though you can probably still do it using this technique instead. Speaking of abusing glitches and exploits, this was the first out-of-bounds glitch I have ever pulled off. I can't believe I actually found this as a really young kid, like 7 or 8, blew my feeble little mind. I understand that there are people who like to go back to old levels with new abilities to do more stuff in them, but I think that only works well with like large interconnected worlds like Banjo-Kazooie, I presume, and well, the entire Metroidvania genre. Mainly if the ability repurposes old environments with new gameplay opportunities, traversal options, and new areas that expand it instead of just do a minute-long challenge or grab a few gems you couldn't get to. Spyro levels feel like, and this was especially the case at the first game, that you should just be one and done with them. If you're like me on the matter, I recommend just doing all the levels as much as you can, and just before the final boss, or after the final boss in Spyro 3's case, just revisit them all in order just before going off to the final bonus level. Also, here's a pro tip from me personally, go to Colossus before you go to Idle Springs. You'll need to be able to swim underwater to 100% that place, and to do this recurring challenge that happens all throughout the level. And there's not enough gems to get the upgrade beforehand, so despite it being nearer, just go to the one on the island. These two portals should have been swapped here. I mean, they're intentionally trying to trap you into revisiting it, so friggin' whatever. Yes, you'll need to buy those new moves. Yes, it's about time to talk about this notorious character, Moneybags. He's a living, breathing paywall, denying you access to places and things until you cough up enough gems. His function is to ensure you're actually collecting the gems, as you should be doing anyways. I think there was only like 2 gem checks in Spyro 1, so he's that, but more prevalent, and is entertaining to listen to.
Say, Spyro, you see this wall here? I bet you're dying to know what's on the other side. If only I had a few more gems, I might be able to remember how to lower the wall.
I used to not really know why people hated him so much. I mean, he never gave me trouble. Moneybags is a clear criticism of capitalism, and if you like these games in any ways, then you must accept this as truth and realize how we live in a society. Bruh, just walk up to him and press A twice. Is it really that hard for you people to play the game properly? Sure, he's condescending and is obviously conning you in most of these instances, but he's not that bad. Heck, this cutscene here shows you his reasoning and reminds you that he's still technically on your side of the fight.
That Ripto has caused enough damage. All his meddling has cost me a fortune. If it wasn't for Spyro, I'd be bankrupt. If Ripto were here, I'd give him a piece of my mind.
I think most people hate him because of his appearance in Spyro 3, as I swear, he is much more aggressive of his appearances in that game. I think. I didn't keep count. Let me jump forward for a little bit. He forces you to pay a lot more in that game, and if you actually pay attention to what he's saying, especially if you talk to him after making a payment, like, I always knew he was a greedy, sleazy opportunist, but he is a straight-up scumbag in that game. Like, just now did I realize this connection.
I have to hurry in myself. I'm one of the judges for tonight's performance.
That was my best performance ever. I guess one of the judges didn't like it, though. He threw this egg at me instead of a rose.
You can't even say that he's on your side of the fight this time, because he made a lot of deals with the sorceress, the villain of that game, and forces you to outbid her. I do like the new voice actor in the third game. He sounds a lot more refined.
Well, Spyro, today is your lucky day. The wizards and I have worked out a little deal. If you simply pay a small toll...
No! Okay, so minor spoiler, I don't think it will ruin the game for you, but after you defeat the final boss of Spyro 3, you'll have your final encounter with him, where he says he's going to sell a dragon egg somewhere, and you gotta chase him down in this great cathartic release, beating out of him every gem he has taken from you in that game, and forcing him into an early retirement. When I was stupid young, since I didn't really pay attention to the dialogue boxes for the most part, I was rather confused on why he was avoiding me. Like, I would have had it where he offered you the egg, but like a price way too high for you to pay, at least up to that point, and then say he was going to sell off the egg elsewhere if you couldn't afford it, which would then make Spyro snap. I think that would probably be a kind of a nice fake out. Back to Spyro 2, though the following still applies to Spyro 3. The level structure, while still fundamentally familiar, now feels fundamentally different to progress through. The levels now feel more compacted and less open, with traversal no longer being the main source of challenge here. There is now a focus on, well, these challenges, 2 or more each level. You talk to an NPC, which is a thing now, and, ignore please? Yeah, I'm using an emulator. So what? Don't give me that look. I ripped my own ROMs, thank you very much. It's only illegal if you download or distribute them. Yeah, well, I did say in another video that I preferred playing on original hardware rather than attempting to figure out how to emulate. I wanted to give these games better representation for this video because I love them so much. And come on, this looks so much cleaner. Here we see the Virgin original hardware with its analog video output. Notice the messy blur, weird flickering on the static imagery, frickin' scan lines, and how I cannot load past this screen anymore no matter how many times I clean the disc. And here we have the Chad emulation, with its sleek pixel perfection, bright coloring, and being able to see more gaps where the polygons are supposed to meet. And apparently a bunch of optimization hiccups I couldn't figure out how to get rid of no matter what settings I changed. I know I could boost the visuals more, and I mean really boost them, but I'm keeping it at this pixely resolution because it's more accurate to the original PlayStation output, yet still high enough quality to look good on a YouTube video, even though there are more weird pixels than the original would have. Plus, it was this emulator's default setting, which I didn't change at first, so I'm keeping these visuals for the sake of consistency. Trey, quit going on random tangents. The missions, the level design. Yeah, you got these missions, or I guess challenges now, and they're given to you by mid-stage NPCs. The NPC at the beginning of a level just tells you what's going on, asking for help while magically knowing your name, despite you never ever setting foot in these regions before. I see word travels quickly in Avalar. These challenges usually have you doing all sorts of things, ranging from collecting a certain number of things, to flaming a certain number of things, or you doing some sort of minigame. Thankfully, they're not repetitive and vary greatly. Almost every single one is unique to keep things fresh. They reward you with orbs, which make sure to get as many as you can. They're not required at the beginning of a game, but you'll definitely need them later.
In Spyro 1, you just did the same thing. In Spyro 2, you're now doing at least 3 very different things from each other. We have what we call talisman challenges and orb challenges.
Personally, I both like and dislike the challenges for different reasons. In my case for them, most of them are pretty good. They can really test your skill with Spyro, or just put you through a fun little minigame that'll give you a breather from the main gameplay loop. My favorites include the windmill platforming, the paragliding, almost everything in Dragon Shores, that's just basically a big old bonus world. That combo power-up sheepdog fight at the end of Metropolis, using the supercharge again, even though it's more finicky than the first game and the layout of the tracks is more annoying to navigate. The bone finding mission in Skelos Badlands is great in my book because, well, has you going out the level collecting things, which is, well, what the game is about. Oh no, I forgot about this! No, don't do it! I love the revamped Super Flame power. Blowing stuff up with these explosive fireballs is always fun, though it's more difficult to aim and not as reliable as the flame bursting you usually do. So yeah, I do find a handful of them pretty fun, though I will admit most of them are mundane at best. In my case against them, even though they are supposed to be a breather from the main gameplay loop, which people were wanting, They can bring the level's pacing down to a grinding halt. It just cuts into the flow of a level, even though they're usually at the end, with maybe one in between. It still feels too quick though, because the levels are typically way shorter now, even causing you to backtrack through them possibly multiple times. Which probably isn't all that bad if you miss some gems, and like the first game, levels typically loop back on themselves, but to me it just feels like padding. As said, although there are a handful that are fun, most of these missions are somewhat mundane, with some just being straight up not good, either from being too unfun or just overly difficult, or both. Let me list off some of the most notorious missions. The hockey one is the one that they were most proud of, even though it's just nice and novel at best and frustrating at worst. I mean, it's pretty shallow, and the AI is mean. I think people hate on this crystal popcorn one the most. You gotta collect more of these things popping out of the ground than Hunter, and there's like 2 rounds, and the last one is tough as nails. You gotta play perfectly to just stay barely ahead of him. I mean, I got good at it, and I find it fun, but I completely understand why people dislike it, with some calling it the worst challenge in the game. Another one I find fun that most people say is a contender for the worst is the trolley challenge, which is just bonkers through and through.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
Trying to dodge everything coming into view last second, making the whole mission nothing but trial and error.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
Trying to collect all of these golden gears that all respawn when you inevitably crash.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
And hearing that phrase a lot ingrained into so many kids where it automatically became a meme whenever you talk about Spyro. I also can't forget about the infamous baby turtles being suicidal for soup challenges. Both of them. Like, why are these turtles just walking towards their obvious death? Is that like, is that dinner chime magical? Also, why can't I just end this guy? You just gotta charge these things away, but it's definitely harder than it looks, at least on the second round. Also, that stupid alchemist mission. I'll talk about that when I talk about levels specifically. People may say that the first game is too easy, especially since that game gave you so many extra lives. Heck, if you defeat an enemy you already killed, he'll drop a shiny pearl-like orb, which I theorize is their soul, so pick up enough of them and you'll get an extra life. It takes multiple Nork souls to equal a dragon one? Unsurprising for an inferior race. I kid. But speaking of enemy souls, enemies no longer drop gems, which irks me greatly, but their spirit or whatever just flies off to light up one of these power-up gates, which can grant you supercharge, super flame, invulnerability, or go boing. Alright, so back to the game's difficulty and how lenient Spyro 1 was with its retries. Let's be honest with ourselves, the other 2 games shower you with just as many extra lives, maybe even more so. Heck, kill 10 fodder, get a 1-up. You can literally farm lives in the homeworlds. The levels themselves are objectively easier to traverse through. It's just the challenges that get stupid hard. Like I said earlier, the levels feel less open and more compact now. I'm guessing to make constant backtracking and lapping the map for challenge-related reasons less tedious. Also, despite feeling shorter to get to the end, the levels take longer to beat. Well, mostly due to missions, which I guess is the point. Something about Spyro 1 that I both like and dislike in comparison with the other games is how freeform it feels. The sequels introduce more standardization, which I like. Like, for example, thank you for including the visual timers on the power-ups in Spyro 1 Reignited, but these elements kind of threw away the adventurous mystery in my opinion. Once, power-ups came from random instances like fairies kissing you, or how supercharge is gained by these arrows on the ground, or how sometimes fairies will keep you from falling, or whatever. Now these random instances aren't as prevalent. Now it's like things like you have to go through these gates for the power-ups, and now all power-ups have a cool timer, which is okay. I mean, I don't know, it just takes away most of the discovery and intrigue that I really liked about the first game, but I still like these new elements. Levels are now themey. I mean, despite having the overarching world progression of medieval naturalism and fairy tale whimsy converting to industrial takeover due to the Nork invasion, the first Spyro was already kind of themey, but this is when it really starts to become the basis of every world. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with using popular themes and locations or whatnot for your levels, and it executes these themes really well and decides to mix up ideas in some pretty cool ways. Plus, an interesting overarching design that this game has of its own is that almost every level has a counterpart. Yeah, you may not realize it at first, and some being counterparts may feel like a stretch, but you'll probably catch on when you play Breeze Harbor and Zypher, two of my favorite levels. I mean, they have Spyro essentially acting like a mercenary, fighting for whoever's allowing him access to the shinies. One level has you fending off the worm guys and helping the bird dudes get their air fleet ready for a counterattack, and the next one has you helping the worm guys to fend off a full-on invasion of bird dudes. These levels and their designs get creative. Although it doesn't feel like you're venturing into magical, forgotten, war-torn lands anymore, it sure feels like you're being thrown to a creative though recognizable worlds, becoming war-torn, but still having peaceful residents in them trying to deal with it. So yeah, although it does a good job with the level themings, my biggest problem with this kind of theming the Spyro series adapts from here on out is, I'll talk about it more when I talk about the third game, because it goes a little crazy in that game. Also, one cool new change is that the hub worlds no longer have enemies. Now they appropriately feel like safe havens and have a nice soothing atmosphere, aided by this surreal yet tranquil music. Or I guess, better to say, ambience. There are only 3 homeworlds this time around, but they do host more stages each. We got Summer Forest, Autumn Plains, and Winter Tundra. Yeah, they're based off of seasons, but there's no representation for spring. This is so sad. Can we hit 46 quintillion likes for the marginalized spring peeps? Well, that would be very much appreciative. So yes, the world and gameplay of Spyro 2 subtly yet surely feels fundamentally different than Spyro 1, but not really in a bad way, as this new direction is still very good in its own right. If there's one thing that the level themes really improve upon, it's the music. Although Spyro 1's soundtrack is great, and even has varying moods, most of it just feels like it can just blur together. In Spyro 2, Copeland adds to his unique style with regional instruments and other appropriate sounds that fit the themes of each level, including a lot of mechanical noises and ambience, which I really dig. It's like Spyro's signature music is being stretched and transformed with all sorts of cultural flair. Although I personally don't really like these levels all that much for the reasons I've already laid out, they're still really well designed and many of them are of good quality. My favorites would have to be Colossus, Magma Cone, Scorch with its cool enemies like these reposing swordsmen, and Desert Arquebus, adopted in the Ottoman Empire and other Middle Eastern nations around the 1500s I think, also censored in the remake. Oh, and this level also has like these 2 child spies helping you out that are essentially let's see, more favorite levels. Robotica Farms and definitely Metropolis. Breeze Harbor and Zypher, I already mentioned those. Hurricos, heck yeah! Besides the garbage mission with the Thunderstones, this is an amazingly designed and fun to play level, with an amazing and entrancing atmosphere, backed by possibly my favorite music track in the game. This while populated by nerdy monotone SpongeBobs.
Thank you, Spyro. You've deactivated all of the electric barriers. We've been guarding this talisman
from the gear grinders. Please, take it as a reward.
Why did they change this in the remake? Why? Well, apparently, Nickelodeon freaking copyrighted the sound of SpongeBob's voice. Yes, part of Tom Kenny's biological ability is now enslaved by Viacom. What the crap? Sadly, now I have least favorite levels. Idle Springs is a good level, but the atmosphere just makes it feel drab for me, and also, I can't charge through the enemies, which breaks the usually high-paced flow. Like, why do you get bounced back by only some enemies that you're supposed to charge through in this game? It's unsatisfying. They didn't do that at all in Spyro 1. Well, except for maybe these guys, but they were big, that was the point. Sunny Shores was okay, but it just rubs me the wrong way. Especially since you just have to return to it to do the annoying and notorious turtle suicide soup mission, Fracture Hills. Ugh. Most people hate it because
I'm gonna stick me thumbs in your eyes and hang on till you're dead.
Honestly, I don't mind that. But what I do mind is the awful, and I mean awful, alchemist missions where you have to escort this old dude over to Hunter to free him of a chronic case of mafia foot.
Not the bad thing.
It sounds straightforward, but it's literally not, as he takes the most nonsensical, convoluted path possible. He even intentionally jukes you. The real kicker is the fact that Hunter is literally right next to his house. Oh, this has to be a joke by the devs at our expense. Ugh. Rise up, gamers. Also, to rub salt in the wound, you'll need the head bash for Hunter's mission, which takes place right after that mission. And if you don't have it, which you won't because it's in the next world, you'll have to do the dang freaking escort mission all over again. I advise ignoring the lower level of this stage until you buy that move. I almost forgot to mention the flying levels again. They're back, and they're as good as ever, at first. I swear, as this game goes on, the more linear they feel. In Spyro 1, and definitely at least the first speedway of this game, they feel like they have multiple beginnings, which initially lure you with an obvious path, but you can go and create an optimal path or your own, or see what goes faster, and, explore and kind of figure it out yourself. But it feels like they just started to cheap out on that concept, making these levels so much less open and fun. Like, there is a straight path now, and you better follow it, and you better not diverge through it, so yeah, I guess. Like, what fun is that? Oh, but you can now supercharge now on these stages. Is supercharge faster than flying? I mean, they look similar enough for it not to be worth it, but I swear the charge is just slightly faster, but I can't confirm. I guess I better test it out on these expendable spectators. Oh look, you can talk to one. Yes, that's right, there's a hidden NPC you can find in each flying level that'll give you a challenge, which always has something to do with Hunter. And they're all pretty good. Guess what? The bosses feel like actual bosses. You got Crush, Gulp, and Ripto. They're not too hard, but they'll still challenge you. Honestly, if you were to ask me, I felt like it was too hard, at least as a kid. Then again, I swore these fireballs are like 4 times larger, and that this chasing attack was near impossible to avoid. As for Gulp, hitboxes everywhere, especially in front of where you're headed. Yeah, so he literally leads his shots. I recommend doing this little dance here to get them all mixed up. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I didn't get past this part when I was younger. I didn't beat this game until college when I was scouring eBay for cheap replacements for some of my old scratched up games. Now, spoiler alert for both Spyro 1 and 2, although I don't think it will ruin your enjoyment because they're simple platformer games with simple stories. Ripto is the best final boss in the series. He even has 3 phases that are all creative and challenging. That weird final cyborg bird phase is really tough, and I remember it being like near impossible to get hits on him. Though during this run I was able to get through him on first try, so I don't know. Yeah, in the original Spyro games, the villains, at least implicitly, were all supposed to permanently die after you dealt with them. But of course, in future games, the temptation was just too great to just leave them that way, especially since Ripto is such a great villain. Now that Ripto is game ended, you get your rightful compensation and head out to Dragon Shores and take place in theme park festivities like shooting stuff. Trouble Trolley 2.0.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
What? Shooting stuff, but more explodey. And the Love Tunnel. And if you do all that, you get to enter the theater, which is just a cutscene viewer. And if you got all the gems and such, you can achieve permanent super flame, which is now useless unless you're a speedrunner. Or if you start a new game over that file, you can play through the whole game with it, although for some reason it wasn't working with me. Might as well mess around with some cheat codes while I'm at it.
Bruh.
I should probably also mention these skill points. They're practically achievements back before achievements were a thing. They pretty much have you doing all sorts of random or skillful stuff like fly on this far off idol or beat the bosses without taking damage. Yeah, that's a no bueno for me. They don't count towards your completion score, so I would say don't worry about them if you're doing 100% playthrough, just like you likely wouldn't worry about getting achievements or trophies, even though those are technically outside the game. These are part of the game itself, and do unlock this neat little epilogue and art for some of the scrapped enemies. Whatever, I don't care for them, especially since they're like really hidden. You have to like find like an online guide just to get names or an explanation on what it wants you to do. So, overall, Spyro 2 is a great game that expanded on the first game, though in ways that I'm not too pleased with. Plus, although it attempts to address the first game's flaws, it also spawned some new ones while doing so. Still, it's a great game with amazing gameplay, overflowing with creativity. It is an awesome adventure, one that I would highly recommend. Fun fact, it took only a little over a year for them to develop this game, mostly since they used the first Spyro game as a base to work off of. It must have crossed their minds that if they were to do that again, they would be able to create a third game right before the new generation of consoles started rolling out. But this begs the question, where could our purple dragon go from here? Maybe to the other side of the world. After Spyro 2 came Spyro Year of the Dragon. Insomniac knew that it had to be released on the year 2000 for two reasons. One, a new generation of consoles were coming fast and waiting any longer would have seriously jeopardized the game's success. And two, it would be the Chinese Year of the Dragon. And come on, that's just an awesome coincidental opportunity you just can't let slip by. I also think that the idea leaked into the story and theming of this game as well, because Spyro is going on an adventure to the other side of the world. Just like how it's believed that China is on the opposite side of North America, even though that's not true at all. It's actually South America, and that's a kinda... Well, anyways. In this game, an army of Rhinox, led by this mysterious robed figure, tunnel to the Dragon Realms to steal all the dragon eggs, which seem to have multiplied in size since Spyro 1. Are they supposed to do that? Is that how it works? Why are you guys just sleeping around outside and have all these delicate eggs just scattered about? Like, don't y'all have houses or castles or caves or...
Get her!
Well, they nabbed all the eggs and took them back to their homeworld, the Forgotten Worlds, the dragon's original homeworld. Since they're the only ones that can fit through these quick travel holes, Spyro and Hunter, plus Sparks and Zoe, venture off to get all the eggs back, which, yes, is your next main collectible. Look at them hatch the moment they come into your possession. Turns out this land is under the seemingly unquestioned authority of the Sorceress, who is ordering her apprentice, the secretly sweethearted Bianca, to collect and protect all of the eggs in order to bring magic back to the worlds from them existing, i.e. not very Gucci money in my honest opinion. So, here we go again, going from world to world, level to level, getting gems, doing challenges, doing speedways, doing bosses, and getting that quintessential collectathon main collectible, them dragon's eggs.
Jason! Come here. Why do you disappoint me? Second by second, you waste my time.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say how the main objective feels like it went back to how Spyro 1 worked, but the dragon eggs feel more like the orbs than I initially realized. They are mainly just used to open deactivated portals, and your main way of progressing is getting to the end of a level so that an inhabitant can help construct a vehicle to get you to the next world. Kinda like how the Spyro 2 talismans worked. Yeah, this game is basically Spyro 2, but more, while simultaneously trying not to be like Spyro 2, if that makes sense. The gameplay is the best it has ever been. It plays just like the last one did, maybe even a little tighter, except with one big addition that I can't believe I underutilized in the past. L1 and R1 being centering camera buttons. Now, I said you could use the look as a de facto center camera button, but this works so much better. Now that's an adequate reason to axe the rolls. Another cool thing is that you start off with all the learned moves from the previous game. Now, I want to say that it completely builds on Spyro 2 and introduces new things that enhances the Spyro formula and gameplay, but honestly, I think that's where this game falls flat. You'll notice this as soon as you step through the first portal. Aw, no level cutscenes.
Oh my.
Nah, did I really forget to mention those? Yeah, in Spyro 2, since going through the portals were no longer a seamless transition, they gave every level a couple of cutscenes for when you enter and leave.
Yoink. Bruh.
They're short, but they're funny and charming. Like being there to show you what's going down and to entertain you with some slapstick that's both simple and brutal. Like, jeez, he just cold-blooded murdered that other guy. No remorse. Some of them are really great. I recommend just pulling up a compilation of all of them and just watching them all back to back. Well, they ain't in this game, and that distills onto me the big sad. I'm guessing it was to make room for the story cutscenes, of which there are way more frequent because this game is surprisingly story driven. Heck, I think this game's best quality is its story, because it's solid for what it is. It mainly focuses on the character arc of Bianca, the sorceress's apprentice, who starts off really hostile, but becomes more reluctant the more she learns about the true nature of her master's plot. Also, she and Hunter start bonding. Like bonding. And thankfully, it's not out of left field.
We should help her.
You're kidding, right? She nearly toasted you.
Yeah, but she was aiming at you.
Say, is it just me? Or is she kind of cute when she's angry?
Besides the story, if there's one thing that this game tries its absolute hardest to expand upon from the previous game, it's the challenges, because they get insane. Most of the challenges in Spyro 2 tested your abilities controlling Spyro, and you having to adapt to a new gameplay style or a minigame was the exception. Well, that's been turned on its head this time around, for the name of this game is Variety.
The variety of gameplay in Spyro Year of the Dragon is mind-boggling.
Now, variety in a game can be a really good thing, breaking up any monotony and testing your skills in exciting new ways. You just gotta make sure to keep everything fleshed out and not to lose focus. This game goes absolutely overboard with it. It got you skateboarding, gunboating, dogfighting, mole whacking, submarining, side-scrolling, strafe shooting, sliding, and just so much more. Literally variety for the sake of variety. That approach typically falls flat on its face because, you know, the logistics of quantity over quality. To be honest with you, Spyro 3 does a surprisingly fine job balancing all of these things, but predictably, although there are some really good ones, there are a number of ones that just suck. But I'll get into my favorite and least favorite challenges in a moment. Yeah, there are some good ones, and thankfully, they don't always one and done these ideas. They'll usually show up twice, once to introduce it and another to flesh it out. So that's good. That's good game design there. But let me tell you what really shakes up this game from the rest. The cornerstone, the faces of the gameplay variety of this title tries to boast are undoubtedly the secondary characters you can play as. Story-wise, I think they were a handful of freedom fighters pushing back against the sorceress and her ever-growing control. But, unfortunately, all got captured. Fortunately, they are under guard by our old friend Moneybags. Yeah, he'll give them to you if you pay him more than what she's offering. And once you release them, they beat him up for his greed.
Now, hold on.
One more, perhaps? At least.
These guys are a majorly focused on asset of this game, so I guess I could dedicate a paragraph to each of them. First character you free is Sheila, the predictably Australian kangaroo who unpredictably resides in the Alps.
Now, how many times have I told you not to tease that moose?
It was Billy's idea. Yeah.
You stupid. Besides most of the dragons you have to rescue in the first game, she's the only character with a major redesign in Reignited that I fully approve of. Mostly because she just started out as a bland, boring kangaroo. I mean, come on, she has no distinguishing features. Her gameplay, I'm mixed on. It's fine, but could have been a lot better. She feels weirdly both pretty fast and too slow. I think it's the jumping not having enough horizontal movement. It's weird. She moves on the ground pretty fast, but unlike Spyro, her momentum doesn't carry over to her jumps, which is very detrimental since it's a major aspect of her playstyle, because, you know, she's a kangaroo, jumping's what they do. She can kick, jump, stomp, double jump, air hop, and do a bounding jump. Double jump. I am not calling it that. I'm just going to call them double jump and landing jump respectively. That landing jump you activate by jumping as soon as you hit the ground, and it sends you skyrocketing. Too bad it's not as satisfying as it could be, because your movement forward is just barely anything at all. It feels like I can barely get over these edges. Maybe if you went twice as far, I think it would be fine. Hey, I just came up with an idea. You know what they should have done? They should have had it where she keeps the sideways momentum in the jumps, including the landing one, so that you could go rocketing far off. Yeah, it'll be like Mario's triple jump, but on steroids. I mean, they would be able to make some cool levels for her if they did that. The second one is Sergeant James Byrd, 90068, a British-sounding World War II militaristic flying penguin with many rocket launchers mounted to his shoulders.
These are the latest military hardware. DBX-9 rocket launchers, state-of-the-art.
British? Stupid, out there, and fun as heck to play. Probably the best secondary character out of a bunch, though could still use improvements. He's wonky to maneuver, but it's theoretically possible to get used to him, and definitely possible to have fun doing it. Cause come on, lock on rockets. He has a pathetic waddle, but pressing jump sends him airborne, and keep pressing it to keep him flapping, or just hold it down if you're lame. He can fire homing rockets, though you'll still need to aim semi-good, and you can pick stuff up with his feet, look downwards, and then drop the stuff on things. Preferably your fleshy opposition. Next up is Bentley the Yeti. Like Sheila, also kind of a lame design, but he's a Yeti, and he has this cool transparent club made out of ice. Now, you would think he'll be one of those big and dull types, wouldn't you? But, in actuality, to undercut your presuppositions expectantly acquired through prevalent innocuous depictions and trite cliche of such like Agnan archetypes, the verisimilitude of the circumstance is that this fabricated personage exultantly brandishes a relatively unfathomable and commodious vernacular, an expansive circumlocution of a superfluous vocabulary constituting bounteous and pragmatically superannuated terminology of similarness to those word trivia unsolicitedly commissions to my established electrical receiving address, endeavoring in their honorific objective of informing my person and the unwitting masses multitudinous denotations of abstruse language, deservedly bearing justifiably inordinate abatement betwixt communicative convention amongst contemporary civilities, cause ain't no one wanna deal with big confusing dead words only used by pretentious know-it-alls and English scholars with nothing better to do.
Ah, the first rejuvenating breath of freedom. With the humility of a wounded sparrow, I genuflect to my noble deliverer.
It was no big deal, dude.
Point is, he got brains, bronze, and a cockney-sounding little brother. He's purposefully slow, but can hit hard. But since you can already one-shot nearly everything in this game with every other character, this essentially means you can break containers and smash through obstacles that the others would not be able to bypass if they ever came across them. His other ability is that he can do this club spin to reflect some projectiles, and yeah, despite his apparent intellect, he is stupidly basic and uninteresting.
Look at this dude.
And lastly, you mistakenly free Agent 9, a coked up lab monkey carelessly waving around a loaded gun.
Check this out.
Woo! Wish I could stay, but my homeworld's been overrun by Rhinox since I've been captured. If you happen to see the sorceress, tell her I'll be giving her dancing lessons real soon. Know what I mean?
I think he's supposed to be an experiment of the professor and/or part of some secret task force of Avalar. In either case, he wants to play like a third-person shooter so bad, but the execution is just so bad. Some people swear that this was a guy's prototype of Insomniac's upcoming game, Ratchet & Clank, and, well, I wouldn't be surprised, for it feels kinda like that, but worse in literally every way. You both move and aim with the left analog stick. Press circle to shoot and press square to throw grenades if you pick them up. Triangle will make you enter this sniping mode, where you can fully look around and zoom into your targets. You can also use L1 and R1 to strafe, which is clunky, but definitely helpful. Oh, and to add insult to fatal injury, the vertical aiming is inverted. Grand. Overall, this plays downright terrible, but it's possible to get somewhat adjusted to it. I remember coming to like it as a dumb kid, but I also remember finding it like nearly unplayable on a later playthrough. Now, with my latest playthrough, I'm kind of in the middle of those two extremes, but I still overall dislike it. Thankfully, Reignited did Agent 9 right with the new controls, with the right stick as camera and R2 being able to shoot. Agent 9 becomes really fun to use and actually feels like Ratchet & Clank, but it makes me sad when I remember that they only used this kind of gameplay style for him like once for his homeworld, or not his homeworld, but for like his level. His other three instances are like this bird's eye arena gauntlet, this Doom-like first-person shooter section, which is, let me get sidetracked real quick, which is one of the worst challenges in the game because it controls like complete crap. No, seriously. This was a console FPS before people realized they should be using both sticks to move and aim. Games like these were notoriously terrible, and there are like 2 good ones, maybe 3, I think. Pro tip, look up in one of the first 2 rooms, and you'll find this full auto power up, which should have been a normal pickup they should have given to you at the middle point of a level when you had to backtrack and fight through the rooms all over again backwards. Like, why was that not there? This is a slog and it plays terrible. But as said, it plays a lot better in Reignited. Oh yeah, and lastly, the only other instance where you play as him is in this rail shooter mission, which is cool, but you're expected to travel through it normally to get the leftover gems. Can we get more enemies to make it feel fun to have more normal Agent 9 gameplay, I guess? Maybe they were going for a ghost town atmosphere, but you still would have gotten that feeling on the return trip. Yeah, Agent 9, a lot of missed potential. In my honest opinion, if they wanted to focus on variety in the gameplay and also being completely different to the first 2 Spyro games, They probably should have focused more on these characters rather than throwing in so many random challenges that require a vast amount of operations that all had to be programmed in. You know what they could have done? You know what they should have done? I think instead of doing all these random challenges and all that, and different controls just for the sake of variety, what they should have done was, instead of just having a few dedicated levels and challenges for each of these dedicated characters, they should have made nearly every single stage in this game be playable as Spyro and one other different character. Think about it. Maybe one level could have you go through as Spyro, but there's a bunch of ledges above you that you can't reach. But once you reach the end of a level, you can go back or loop around as Sheila and platform on those higher platforms and stuff like that. Maybe even have a challenge up there. See what I mean? Turns out they actually tried this concept once in one level, Enchanted Towers, a level that I think is one of the best designed in the game. I'll get to my favorite levels in a bit. But yeah, you can play through the level as Spyro, but you'll notice all this stuff out of reach, like on balloons and top of these towers. Well, yeah, you're supposed to go back through with Sergeant Bird, looking for golden bones and... Oh no, not again! And treasure in the secret rooms at the top of the titular towers. But yeah, I remember one playthrough, I got confused at this part and I had no idea. I completely forgot you actually played as Sergeant Bird in this one. And ever since then, I kind of have a little bit of a grudge against Enchanted Towers, but it's okay. I'm not really a fan of all the enemies you have to spit rocks at. That just drags.
I have a couple of favorite levels in the game. The one of them would be Enchanted Towers. It's one of the ones where you play as Sergeant Bird, and so you're able to get some elevation and just let loose with the rockets, and you're just shooting down balloons and flying creatures. So I found that pushing the artistic envelope, pushing the engine, and allowing us to do something really gorgeous.
But yeah, sadly, this only happens once, and I wish it happened at least once with every character, but if I had it my way, I would have designed the whole game around this concept. But what can you do? Instead, we just got a bunch of phoned in garbage, like so much stuff, like, well, I just want to play as Spyro. What is this? What is this? What is that? You want to know how many vehicles, characters, and, well, different play styles this game has you shifting through? 21. 31 if you were to include minor changes like Spyro swimming or flying, or the hover tank that can lob shots unlike the other one that can't. Like, well, geez, why are there so many? Why can't we just focus on the core gameplay and expanding that like any normal sequel? I'll tell you why. Insomniac didn't want to make Spyro anymore. They admitted they didn't want to make Spyro anymore. They believe he already peaked.
But we wanted to know if there would be a fourth Spyro game from the Insomniac team.
Spyro was originally intended as a trilogy, and it was our goal to make the final chapter the most exciting. And I think we've really done that.
Here's an infamous quote from good old Teddy Price saying why they stopped developing Spyro games. Apparently, the reason is cause Spyro ain't got no hands to wield stuff with, which, guessing from Insomniac's games at the time, got mass misremembered into, we stopped making Spyro cause he can't hold guns, which got me like, can't use a gun? Is that really your big problem, that he doesn't have opposable thumbs to wield stuff with? You really think he needs a gun? Honestly, that's shorthand for them thinking that they have reached the peak of what they can do with Spyro's core concept, which I argue is completely untrue. You could have explored him having more dragon-related powers, like maybe after he grows some more, he could give him more movement options, using magic, the ability to fly all the time. Heck, remember Nasty's Loot, the level with the mechanic where you can fly but only up to a point of your currently highest jump? You can make a whole game's worth of level designed around that dynamic. Also, perhaps the most obvious and potential granting idea, Spyro being able to breathe different breaths. Yes, if there's one thing the post-Insomniac sequels did right, it was trying to explore this mechanic. Just like having 2 characters per level, they toyed with this ingenious idea only once in one level, Frozen Altars. Great level, one of my favorites. where you can only breathe a freezing ice breath that they pull some really smart things with, but it's only used for that level only. It's given to you by the Snow Fairy, which I always forget about. Like, I just assume Spyro has it because it's so cold or something, which, like, if they didn't have the fairy, people would probably be asking, like, why doesn't Spyro have the ice breath in the other snow level? Turns out the reason why this game is a messy mishmash of ideas is, well, personal theory. I don't think I had any foresight on what to do with Spyro, especially for a third outing. Like, for the whole trilogy, I think they just, like, for the most part, have just been making stuff up as they went along.
Coming up with the enemies for all these levels would generally consisted of Elan, our animator, just making something. Just making something funny.
That saves you a lot of time debating and talking about concept art. You just like make some stuff.
Everybody here spends a lot of time participating in the game design. There isn't one person that says, hey, I'm dictating what's going to make this game great. Everybody puts in their 2 cents, and as a result, we get games that are much more varied, much deeper, and a lot more.
Some of the later enemies in Spyro 3, when we were in the third Spyro, when we were starting to really run out of the standards, were a little bit weird.
Now, this could have ended in complete disaster, especially with a tight single-year deadline. But they mostly knew what they were doing by this point, and not to mention, the Spyro 2 formula of themey one-off levels and gameplay modifying challenges would be a good haven of throwing ideas at the wall to see what sticks. I won't lie, some of the theming of the levels is actually really cool, and they do make great use of ideas while also combining them with, what I argue, better overall level design than most of Spyro 2's levels. Keyword most, because some of Spyro 2 levels are extremely good, and some of Spyro 3 levels are definitely not. But hey, time to do this again! Favorites and least favorites, yay! My favorite levels include Sunny Villa, great introduction. Seashell Shores is just a better Sunny Shores. Enchanted Towers and Frozen Altars, already talked about those. Spooky Swamps, really interesting. I really like the level design, and the weird haikus make it really charming. Bamboo Terrace is definitely up there. I love the theming, and it's just a good level overall. I also really appreciate Charmed Ridges and Crystal Island's more Spyro 1-esque aesthetics. Fireworks Factory, while home to 2 of the worst challenges in the game, it's still an awesome, exhilarating level.
Fireworks Factory is easily my favorite level because we've got a little Matrix scene going on in there where the camera revolves around stop motion photography.
They're back. Dino Mines might be my favorite. The theming is stupid, but it's great. It's like a Western, but there are dinosaurs with guns. These guys are going to rock your world if you ain't quick. If only we still had the roll. Cold Cavalry M1873 single action army revolvers. I assume that's what they are since they're considered the handgun that won the West. I just noticed that in every level set up to be the last level before the final boss, all have enemies armed with guns. Conversely, I've also noticed that in every first level of enemies, the small ones are always harmless and just cower. I remember one time as a kid just standing in front of this dude for like minutes on end, just waiting for him to finally collect the courage to hit me with his pointy pickaxe he got there. Like, do it. Just do it. Now, least favorites. Enchanted Towers, Haunted Tomb, Molted Crater. I'm kind of mixed on them, but I still think they're good as levels. The secondary character levels are all kind of meh. Agent 9 being like terrible since he doesn't control good, and the entire level just feels like a stop and talk. No, it is a stop and talk tutorial for a game you're not going to be playing. You know, despite not liking this game's, and therefore the level's, core general structure as much now, I still think every level here is thoroughly solid. Like, not a single bad one. Though I bet some would argue Fireworks Factory and Haunted Tomb sucks, but that former one especially when factoring in the challenges. Haunted Tomb, I think it's alright. I think it's fun. I think people don't like it because it's the most forgettable level and also all the environmental hazards that can get annoying. Wait a minute, hold up. You want to know which levels I think are actually bad? Like badly designed and all that? Almost forgot to talk about them again. The flying levels. They are so mind-numbingly linear this time around. Like, there are no more optimal deviations like there used to be. There is no more freedom of choice. I only remember like 2 or 3 instances where it was possible, let alone faster, to go off the intended path and go at an obstacle line like backwards or something, and like the faint hope that you're got some agency. Now here's something a little interesting. Sparks now talks to you here, because he can now, I guess. If you listen carefully, you can tell that he's actually making noises for each word and syllable instead of just doing some random. Also, each speedway now has a race. They're okay, but I don't like them. They're terrible, and I hate playing through them over and over again. Like they're not hard as long as you take every shortcut and use as many of the boost and rocket stars as you can, but they just drag. Like, uh-oh, I wasn't paying attention and didn't shoot enough mouth rockets, and now I'm in 3rd on the final lap. Guess I better restart and spend 5 more minutes on this doing the same thing and Like Spyro 2, you can find Hunter hidden every speedway, and he usually has a mission involving space sheep, because that's the theme. Hey Spyro! Respect the Second Amendment. Stay strapped or get clapped, G. Those challenges are pretty alright. It kind of makes up for the lackluster flying in the flying levels, but yeah. Bam! Last one done. Hopefully I'll never have to fly anything inverted ever again. Okay, let's do favorites and least favorites with this game's challenges. Unlike in Spyro 2, you don't get these missions by coming across a random NPC, but by going through one of these challenge portals. I'm guessing to help differentiate the area from the rest of the level, or keep it separate, or probably something to do with the memory space, or some other technical or design reason. But yeah, with the large magnitude of new ideas and gameplay styles, they are more hit and miss this time around than it was in Spyro 2. Like last time, I want to talk about the ones I didn't like first. There are a lot more duds in this game, and they hit harder. That tank destruction derby thing, I want to say that I like it. I mean, it just sounds awesome, but it's stupidly cutthroat and unfair. The hover tank is hard to control, and the enemies all hide behind these freaking pots and seem to always hit you first. Like, I found myself just cheesing them by hitting their little exposed sides if you angle yourself just right. These little craps in Spooky Swamp are basically the Alchemist mission all over again, but times 2. And do I really need to say anything more than that? Ow! You deserve all the pain you're going to get, you little waster of my limited time on this earth. Redid this challenge so much, the rocks stopped spawning. Yeah, fun fact, in some sections, this game has dynamic difficulty. I'm guessing it's dependent on your life count and or how many times you're failing missions and how much you've been collecting, but yeah, I think I've been playing this game on hard. Let's see, I already talked about the Doom challenge, but the other Fireworks Factory challenge? No, not that one. That one's pretty good. No, this mini boss battle with the twin dragons just suck. You have to be so precise with your shots, and they slowly regenerate. Don't even try to switch your focus to the other one when it gets in your way. Also, you can't just stand on the ground and shoot in one spot because you'll get shot right back. Skateboarding was a poster pleaser, and actually I'm kind of mixed on it to say the least. I wonder why they would feel the need to put Spyro on a score. Hey, there's a remake out now. Yeah, looks like Insomniac took some outside inspiration for some of their challenges and characters. I don't blame him though. I mean, extreme sports definitely popped in the 90s, and also ain't nothing wrong with a little reference or influence. The problem with the skateboarding in this game is, well, the skateboarding in this game, it's not that fun. It is very limited in scope. Like, if you go off a half or quarter pipe, like, you can only turn left or right. And if you go off the ramp, well, you can basically only flip and roll. Trying to do anything else will more likely than not even register as a trick, and you will most likely wipe out. The first skate park and its challenges just... I hated it. I did not like this. I mean, no. But the second skate part was surprisingly good and fun to skate through. Like, even to the point where I was actively trying to grind the highest score I could muster. Like, I don't know what it is about this skate park here in Enchanted Towers. I mean, it's fun. Sadly, these two maps are all you get with the skateboarding. Because Ted Price then had a brain blast and decided, rocket boards. Now this is a fast and fun challenge. The rocket board races are definitely my favorite. They do kind of drag like the speedway races, but they're actually fun and fast-paced and feels like it gives you more agency.
You might be able to beat me at skateboarding, but I still get all the chicks.
What they at though? I mean, just look at it. It looks fun to play, it is fun to play, and it's pretty challenging too. Another one I'm mixed on is Bentley Boxing. Ooh boy, this is a notorious one. You 1v1 that Spyro II Yeti in a boxing match, and it's surprisingly technical, and the controls also contort your hands with unfamiliarity. You have a quick high jab, a slower, riskier, but harder hitting haymaker, and a low gut punch. You automatically guard low, but you can raise your hands for the jab and haymaker, but then you are exposed to the low blow. As said, surprisingly technical, and, like a good fighting game, plays out like a rapid-paced game of rock, paper, scissors. Too bad the enemy AI is a psychic and is extremely aggravating to work with, reacting exactly when you throw out a punch. You can try to play footsies with him, slightly going into his reach to bait out an attack that you can go back in and counter, but the movement is not one-to-one. It's like incremental, and I hate that. You can try to cheese him with repeated jabs and pray that your gut punch hits when he puts his hands up and not immediately smack you in the face. And heaven forbid you get backed into a corner because you might as well reset. Wait, how did I not know this? How did I forget this? You can actually walk up and down. This is in full 3D. Now I feel like an idiot. Now you can do the more reliable jab and sidestep cheese. Honestly, once you get used to it and figure out some strats, it actually gets a little fun. If you don't want to deal with the mess though, you can just outright cheat by plugging in a second controller, because that makes it 2-player. Yes, this is the only instance of multiplayer in all of these games, and it's with this garbage. I haven't tried it myself, but it probably plays better with a competent friend who's willing to put up with all these janky controls. But yeah, while it's really novel, it ain't no esport.
See? He's right near the edge. Oh my god! Destruction! That was emphatic. That was amazing.
Let's talk about the ones I like now. The first Hunter mission has you in this fighter jet and you can't see anything because of a crap camera placement and you die in one hit, but it's just dummy fun to go around blowing everything up. I think the best Hunter mission is the rail shooter one, and I kind of like the weird Honeyway motorboat chase. I think it's like heavily implied that Hunter's gone crazy or something. The rocket boards are, as emphasized, extremely dope, or other trendy word. I like the puzzles, like this little dog puzzle with the little adorable puppy, and this one with the growing beans. They're nice and they're pretty well designed, starting you off with a basic task to learn the puzzle, and then giving you more hard puzzles with the stuff you just learned, before closing it all out with a subversion. I always seem to get a little stuck on the final bean one, I swear. The mini-boss naval battle with Bluto is really neat and fun. So was the mini-boss fight against the sleepy Rhinoc lizard. This 2D section with Sheila is cool and all, but it should have focused more on verticality with how high you can jump and how much your horizontal movement sucks. I love the meaty squish of a whacked mold, don't you? Can I interest you in a game of cat hockey? PETA approved. All of the Sparks levels. Oh yeah, you can play as Sparks, and it's awesome. He controls like a top-down gauntlet-style shooter, which you would rather want to be a twin-stick shooter, but it still feels great, especially if you properly utilize the strafing. The levels themselves are pretty good, though I feel like there could have been more to them, but the combat and shooting definitely makes up for it. And the bosses at the end of each of them are pretty fun to gun down too. You only get access to these levels after fighting the world's boss, which, yeah, you can immediately go back, but do you really want to go back after entering a new world? No, I didn't think so. I just found myself doing all of them in succession after beating the final boss, right before going for that 100% comb through, which, yes, like with the unlockable moves in Spyro 2, is a thing again, because, you know, the other characters you gotta free. Anyways, completing one of these will grant Sparks a new ability to help Spyro with. Grabbing gems farther away, being able to teleport to levels from a guidebook, gaining an additional hit point. I wish he had another color to him instead of just staying gold like in the future GBA game where he became red. Breaking gem containers, which I kinda liked breaking them myself. Oh, and the godsend dubbed the Gem Finder. Hold down all the shoulder buttons to have Sparks point to the direction of the nearest gem. I'd say that this is probably the best ability, since it's really easy to leave behind or miss some random straggling gem hidden some wall crevice somewhere. It's an unlockable in this game, which is appropriate but kinda strange since, fun fact, you had it from the get-go in Spyro 2. Yeah, that's right, if you hold down all the shoulder buttons in that game, boom, there was the Gem Finder. Mind blown. You are never told that you can do this in the game, only in the manual. Heck, you can even center camera in that game. Like, why? I wish I knew about that. Like, you are never told this. Well, I think. I don't know. Maybe it was in that tutorial blah 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 I skipped that came out of Zoe's gob. I found the Gem Finder in Spyro 2 out of complete desperation. Standing on this bridge in Idle Springs, having no idea where these last gems were, and just slamming down all the shoulder buttons, hoping it would work, knowing, or I guess now, thinking that doing it wouldn't do anything, but it did! The Gem Finder is something they implemented in all 3 games in the Reignited trilogy, and while I love that, I don't really like how it works. You just push in the left analog stick to have Sparks quickly twirl in the direction, which, while being satisfying to spam and also retains the game's flow, I think it's very cheap and subject to over-reliance. Doing the all shoulders thing will likely have you stop abusing it and make you use it as a last resort rather than just spamming it while you're playing. I don't know. Either way, you get these Sparks abilities towards the very end of the game, so their usefulness isn't that prevalent. Well, unless you actually U-turned after defeating a boss, which, as said, why would you? Or even how could you know? Speaking of the bosses, let me talk about the music real quick before I forget and inevitably end up in spoiler territory. It seems like Mr. Copeland decided to switch things up with his entry, swapping out most of that classic Spyro alt-rock infused with cultural flair based on the level theming, and experimented with some straight-up techno and electrical stuff, like, or whatever this highly compressed bass-ripping factory noise is, and even giving us a taste of some old-school hip-hop with some of these drum beats. While I am highly affectionate of that classic Spyro style, and it's still there in many places, I cannot tell a lie. This new direction can undeniably slap hard. Stevie also got some help from this guy named Ryan Beveridge, who was just starting to break into the TV and film score industry. I don't know how much of his new direction was because of him, or if he did the heavy techno stuff and Copeland did the tracks that sounded more like normal Spyro or whatever, but hey, This is a rather different yet still awesome OST, especially the super ominous boss tracks. The sorceress and her goons whip up powerful monsters to ambush you while traveling between worlds, and you get that world's secondary character to help you out in some way. These bosses can be quite challenging, but honestly I don't think they're hard at all. Some would tell me spike hard, which, nah, just charge in circles and you'll be fine. He doesn't even lead his shots like the other bosses do. Unless I sucked so hard in that Spooky Swamp challenge that the challenge rating got knocked way down for this fight somehow. Which it shouldn't. I mean, I played another level before fighting this boss, so. Scorch. Scorch is my favorite. From the arena being a colossal skeleton, to the mechanics being just shooting rockets at him, to the background track just being the best boss track here. I really like the intro cutscene to each of them. Adds more insight into what's going on behind the scenes and show Bianca's progression in her story. I like how in Reignited, they gave the next world's secondary character some speaking lines instead of just being teased in the background. Really nice touch. Now, strangely enough, well, hold up. Big spoiler alert for the rest of Spyro 3, so yeah, skip here. So yeah, the final boss. The final boss does not have an intro cutscene, even though it has like 4 cutscenes after it. All you get is just...
Time to kick some sorceress butt.
Well, that was humorously poignant, but Spyro, it feels like he needed some kind of personal interaction with a sorceress because this confrontation feels kind of flat. I mean, his interactions with Ripto are always really fun and made the fight feel more personal. And I mean, sure, we get to see a lot of her leading up to this, but heading up to the fight with her, I mean, give us something to latch onto to pay off all that buildup. I don't think Spyro even talked to the sorceress at any point in this game. Man, this boss is harder than I remember. Well, probably because the stationary turrets you have to use at the beginning of this fight are terrible. Fun fact, if you own an early copy, or the PAL version I think, the pretty decent final boss music for this fight is different because of a bug or limited disk space respectively. Sucks for y'all. Despite this track being fitting to the sorceress, Scorch had a better track worthy of a final boss theme, but oh well. And boom, another villain dead, this time for good as she never reappears in the sequels. You're just gonna let that happen, man? Turns out, there's the super bonus world that you unlock after getting absolutely everything. It's got a few good challenges and a classic Sonic-style secret extra true final boss that sucks straight liquid butt to fight, and I hated every second of it. It's like the bird form in the Ripto fight, but like smaller hitbox, and it's the entire thing. What the heck? Still, no, we still don't get any kind of interaction with her. She just appears, and Bianca tells us that she appeared. After killing her for realsies this time, you are then sent off of the series with this slightly ominous yet adorable cutscene. Yeet. I feel like the normal ending cutscene is better, but I guess that's why they put that there, so that more players would be able to see it. And I mean, yeah, it's a great send-off.
It's a sad sight, Sparks. Another noble warrior falls victim to the plague of love. Just look away. Well, I guess we'll have to find the rest of the eggs by ourselves.
Come on, Spyro. Take a little break. Let's watch the show.
Yeet. That was Spyro 3, and basically, this game was made with the objective to insert as many different, yet hopefully still good playstyles in an attempt to keep the game fresh, varied, and unboring. I'm sure that's a word. As said, variety is the name of the game here, so they tried every cool sounding idea and concept they could come up with in a timely manner, and if they came up with any ideas that they could have, or probably should have, built the entire game around, well, they were probably just too far in development where restarting the game with a more focused design was just out of the question. And I find that meh. But hey, Spyro 2's formula of themey one-off levels and gameplay modifying challenges was suitable for random ideas for levels and game-altering challenges. And in the end, I believe that they have reached this goal with moderately well success. But honestly, I think things could have been better for like both this game and upcoming ones. I'll reiterate that I believe that they should have focused more on expanding the core gameplay and making the world more coherent. I mean, you can use theming effectively, weaving recognizable cultures, geographies, and imagery to fit and expand your fictional setting, but although they're creating and working with really cool ideas and mixing them all together, it feels rather empty and meaningless because you know they aren't concerned with the world building because, well, as they said, they felt like they were at the limits of a series and just wanted to add in as much creative and crazy and wacky stuff in order to instill a crazy and potentially awesome final impression before they dump the series and go on to better things. Other than the gameplay and more standardization, like, what kind of cohesion is there? Spyro could find himself in a freaking enchanted train yard populated with, like, platypuses, maybe, like, conductor gear, being attacked by, like, coal miners with, like, windmill guns. And it would not feel out of place. Like, while yes, this approach theoretically allows for endless opportunities when it comes to creating ideas and for fun experiences, but it will definitely just feel empty and tiring for a while. And there's just a major lack of focus. I believe that like having a singular theme to base everything on, or at least a concrete world to set your stories in, can actually give you more freedom in like a weird paradoxical sense. For example, underwater with scrappy Americana, cartoony mushroomy Fantasyland, Looney Toony science versus mystical nature, bombastic consumerific sci-fi.
One of the great things about Ratchet, the universe, is that it's infinitely extendable, and we never put constraints on what we could do with Ratchet. He's in a completely made-up universe. There are no restrictions for us in terms of what kind of characters we can create, because anything goes in a Ratchet universe. That we never try to define it so strictly that we would limit ourselves. Okay. And so we just keep trying new stuff.
Dadgum! Even freaking Skylanders, especially in the cartoon, did a good job of setting up a consistent world with heavy fantasy elements, the occasional modern or futuristic tech thing or whatever that Spyro sort of initially went for. Oh, Skylanders. I'll talk about them later. I find value in creating a consistent, sensible fictional worlds, even in children's media, which I believe is a necessity for a long-running series. Now, this is highly arguable, especially taking into consideration Spyro's peers and how they adhere, or I guess not truly adhere to this idea. I'll probably dive into this topic in like a standalone video or even in a potential Sonic overview and retrospective because, hoo boy, Sonic is a series that prides itself with story and lore while simultaneously ignoring continuity and tossing any world building it painstakingly makes straight into the trash. No, I am not asking for Spyro to have extensive lore or be strictly fantasy. I just think that Spyro could have been better off with like a lot more focus. Like, who knows, maybe a fantasy only world with like modern tech and stuff like that done by magical devices, or maybe just have like far off races and far off lands have like experimental electric and steampunk tech or something of the nature, just something to tie everything together. Ooh, you want to know what would have been amazing? What if, like with Spyro 1's overarching theme of European childbook fantasy and myth, what if Spyro 3 had an overarching theme of Eastern Chinese dragon-related fantasy and myth? Sounds like a good idea to me. Spyro 2 could have been like probably about like other European cultural stuff, like, I don't know, the Celts, Norse mythology, Greek, other places. You see where I'm getting at? And maybe have like the future games be like based on that stuff merging together or something. or going like wild on like one concept, or who knows? While I can agree that the wild creativity on display here is really neat, going from level to level and getting a novel of something unexpected is predictably going to get old and hollow after a while. And if they were ever to want to like tell an in-depth story that would have to involve thematic or environmental consistency, then that's going to feel out of place. Like, ooh, this bad guy, wow, evil wizard dragon, why doesn't he just create some sort of magical army of robots to appear and take over the world? Like, wouldn't that make sense in this crazy nonsense world? Wait, well, that's just my personal gripe with the quote-unquote original Spyro timeline and world, and oh gosh, it felt kind of cringy saying that, and can't wait to dive more into that later. Now, look, I'm just kind of rambling right now. These things shouldn't devalue your experience with the games, and you probably think I'm an idiot for caring so much about something so seemingly arbitrary, the world building or consistency of a world of a cartoony kids series that much. I don't know, man. I just wish this series could have gone on to better places than where it did. So, here's the question. Which of these 3 games is better? Some would say 3 for its large swath of content, having plenty of variety, perfected core gameplay, and the nicest story. Some would say 2 for focusing more on the perfected gameplay, adding elements the first Spyro lacked, all the while not going overboard with the challenges. And some would say 1 for its focused on pure gameplay, feeling the best to explore and having genuine platforming challenge. If you've been paying attention, then, well, you probably would already know that I have a bias towards that latter camp. Seriously though, the original Spyro is my favorite video game ever. Not the best game I've played, but the one I hold in highest personal regard. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and I like its gameplay loop the best out of the whole trilogy. Although I wish it had the better rounded gameplay of the following games, plus the hover and the charge jump. All of these games are good, and I highly recommend them all to everybody. I would recommend getting the original PlayStation versions, but that's just a personal thing. You'll likely be better off getting the Spyro Reignited trilogy that came out a couple years ago. As I mentioned before, I made a video about it around the time it came out, and I mostly focused on the differences between it and the originals, which, now that I've said everything I wanted to say about the originals, well, would now make a lot more sense. So check it out now that you're enlightened. But if you don't want to tolerate a drop in microphone quality, well, here's the summary. The visuals are fantastically reimagined, and the graphics and art style are consistently good. I was wondering how they were going to interpret the Muppet-faced characters with the original stylings of a Spyro concept art. Despite these praises, there are some major visual design elements and interpretations that I think are just not good. Mostly Ripto, Sparks' weird face proportions and arms and teeth and Also the cutscenes. They're absolutely better for the most part, especially with them adding unique animations and character designs for every single dragon in the first game, even though they had to rush the animations in the third game, but things like the pacing, background music, and different voice direction just make it uncanny as heck. Also, Spyro's character has been dumbed down. Like, Spyro lost a lot of his edge and just doesn't feel right.
Sergeant Bird, 90068. Awaiting orders, sir.
I think you'll have to find your commanding officer for that.
Sergeant Bird, 90068. Awaiting orders, sir.
I think you'll have to find your commanding officer for that.
The music is pretty good. It's been remixed and it's good enough, but I personally would rather listen to the original compositions, which you can actually switch to in the options, so that's great. The worst part of a remake has to be like the crush fight. Like, the visuals are different, I guess, to differentiate them from Gulp's fight, but I just found it unnecessary. Oh, and the music for it has been, like, completely butchered. I mean, that was one of my most favorite tracks to hear. Like, wow. Another bad thing about this game has to be, like, the numerous glitches and performance issues that occur since this game was rushed to meet that 20th anniversary deadline. But they've been patching a lot of things, and hopefully it won't be too big an issue for you now. Also, I wish that this, and also the Insane Crash trilogy, had like ROMs of the original games in it, just for the heck of it and for preservation. In spite of my largely personal biases against some of the reinterpretations and the directions in many of the other parts of the game, I think that the gameplay itself is literally perfect. Spyro has a higher charge jump now in the first game. He can now turn his head all around while looking. The roll is longer and you can use it in like every game. Sparks can now point to the nearest gem at the press of a button. Agent 9 feels really good now because, well, the most important overall change, the right stick now moves the camera. Yeah, I think I know why I struggled playing the originals again. Yeah, get it. It's a great remake of 3 fantastic games with a retail price of only $40, likely now on sale and having cheap aftermarket markdowns. And also now available for every major platform, so you have no excuse, get it. Well, I guess there is a legit excuse now since, well, the recent incident. I can't feel good recommend anything that would directly benefit Activision Blizzard, at least until they undergo some kind of sufficient restructuring to ensure the thing that happened can never come close to happening again. Hence, since I still recommend trying this game out, I can only recommend getting it used, which is where you're probably going to find the best deals anyways. While playing it on the PS4 feels right, I recommend the PC version the most. It is definitely the best way to experience this game. Here's my mod list, but I know, buying digitally equals direct support. Well, fun fact, you don't have to buy directly from Steam. While it's theoretically possible to get an aftermarket key code for this game, none of my normal plugs got any at the moment. I actually think they might be getting scarce. Not even G2A, whom I do not recommend, not even they are offering it as a standalone. Well, if you want to find one, I'll leave that as an exercise for the viewer. Well, that was the legacy of Spyro the Dragon. But if you know anything about anything, you'd know that the story doesn't end here, and it's going to go straight downhill. By the time the original trilogy was completed, the PS2 and other 6th gen consoles were, well, releasing, which would allow new possibilities and comprehensible 3D graphics you won't need to like half interpret.
Back then it was about the number of polygons you could display on screen. That was all the talk, and what was cool is we could make much more complex models. Ratchet, as a character, had more polygons than any of our Spyro levels on their own. That was the big comparison we made, and it was a real eye-opener for most of us because that was a stark demonstration of the leap in processing power that the PlayStation 2 had over the PlayStation 1.
Plenty of places to take Spyro now, but Insomniac just felt done with the series and wanted to explore new ideas with the new possibilities the next generation of gaming tech will allow them. Insomniac would end up creating the Ratchet & Clank series, a crazy cartoony yet gritty sci-fi shooter platformer hybrid that just looks fun and rad as heck to play. Please Sony, just port them to the PS4 store, please, please. So, what happened to Spyro? Did he just become forgotten? Oh no. You see, Insomniac never owned Spyro. They created him, yes, but they were under a publishing contract with Universal, which means that Universal owned the intellectual property. Okay, Sony was the official publisher, but I think the soon-to-be defunct Universal Interactive, which of course was under Universal proper, was some sort of intermediary and ended up with the rights, so I don't really think it counts as a first-party game. Well, maybe yes, but I'm not too sure, because I'm not really sure about the legal stuff and whatever, and also all sorts of names with good money starting to get involved at this point, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. So, when Insomniac decided to move on, Universal wanted more Spyro games to suck money from, they had to go and license it out with different developers, which is exactly what they did, with the results being, well, less than favorable, to put it lightly. In case you're wondering, this is the exact, and I mean the exact same thing that happened with Crash with Naughty Dog. Yeah, Universal owned both of them, and the original creators moved on after their PS1's run. Crazy. I've finally talked about my favorite games of all time, yay! But we ain't just gonna stop it there, oh no. As a high-tier Spyro fan, I have been obligated to play through every Spyro game, and not just the home console releases. I mean, all of them. So, next time, we are going to check out the post-Insomniac Spyro games. What's the tone on those going to be? Let me give you a hint. That's actually going to be a maybe. I was going to say subscribe for that, but you see, as much as I would love to go on to talk about the rest of the series, and also make a bunch of overview and retrospective videos on the many other series and franchises I hold near and dear to my heart, I've decided that it would be best to move on from doing YouTube videos. I may feel rejuvenated thanks to my 5 to 6 month hiatus, big sorry about that, but I'm wanting to shift my focus to a different project. A video game of my own. Heavily inspired by Spyro, in fact, and also a bunch of other inspirations and series and franchises that I hold near and dear to my heart. I'm planning to make a full standalone update video in a week or two about that and also the fate of this channel. I'll still try to make the occasional review if I'm liking something enough, but don't expect a video essay tier thing full of heavily edited memes like you just witnessed. Maybe I'll make a quick look on the sequel to the Sonic movie, or maybe I'll do more mini reviews geared towards YouTube Shorts, Instagram, and TikToks or something, but I doubt it. Look, I have a big procrastination problem and I can't do both at once. Something's got to give. Anyways, thank you so much for your infinite patience and willingness to watch this unnecessarily meaty video to the bitter end. If you can spare a like, I'd be extremely grateful. And if you'd like to subscribe despite the bleak prognosis of the future content here, or just want to know about that game project I got cooking, I thank you. I'm TreyGamer58, and until next time, I will see you next time. So, see ya.